Welcome to Belle's Buzz Talk Show with Belle Cohen. As a business development and life coach, #1 international best-selling author, Belle works with entrepreneurs in creating successful businesses. Belle's show will feature guests that offer breakthrough business strategies with wit, humor, and as much sparkle as possible. Belle looks forward to laughs and productivity every second and fourth Tuesday at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And now here is Belle Cohen.
Hi, everybody, and welcome. I'm so excited to be beginning a new chapter in my life with Belle's Buzz Radio Talk Radio station. And I would like to give you a little bit of an idea of what my plan is. Not that we'll stick to it every week, trust me. This is going to be a very lively, fast-paced show. I'm planning to have guests who will offer business and personal tips for growth and insights on many subjects. Will be fun and buzzing with pertinent information. I will ask my exciting guests to share some pearls of wisdom and knowledge to come away from their show with, which is always a wonderful thing to do. I hope in the future to have questions and answers from callers by Twitter and Facebook instant messaging. Hoping to set up some panels of experts on different subjects. And I wanted to give you a little bit of a background about me, and then we'll get started with my fabulous guest, whose name is Joy Davy, and she's waiting in what she has a blue room, not a green room. So today we have a blue room. Anyway, to let you know a little about me, I have a background in leading healthcare professionals for 18 or more years to grow and prosper in their businesses. I've had fabulous results in increasing their revenues by 60 or more percent after a year of coaching and training with their staff and themselves. I love to work with the staff members to improve their relationships and help them to earn bonuses and really make a difference in their work surroundings. I love to work with clients who are motivated to grow their businesses, as well as those who are stuck in a rut and need some direction to move forward in a big way. So the fun part of Belle's Buzz is that I want to keep this light and I want to keep this fun and exciting. And I have with me today my friend and actually a colleague of mine whose name is Joy Davy. And she's a licensed clinical professional counselor with a private counseling practice in Hinsdale, Illinois. In her practice, Joy works with people who want to improve their mood, feel more control over their emotions in their lives, and have happier, healthier relationships. She also works with people who want to achieve their personal goals. Joy works with young mothers, teenagers, and people throughout their whole lifespan. One very special area that Joy focuses in on is pet grief. Joy is very interested in the human-animal bond. Her website is www.joydavy.com, and it's D-A-V-Y. So, Joy, I know you're there, and I would like to welcome you to the very first Belle's Buzz Talk Radio show.
Wow, Belle, I am so honored to be on your very first show. This is really exciting. And as you said, I am in a blue room. The walls in the room are blue. That's what that means. And I am with my canine co-therapist, Jules, so we can talk a little bit about him later on if you like. And so Jules and I both are honored to be here on your very first show.
Well, please scratch Jules behind the ears a couple times for me.
He loves that, yeah.
No, he does. So tell us a little bit about, I know you have a large scope, not only in a private coaching and
counseling
practice, but please give us a little bit of an update on what you do with the human and animal connection. I'm very interested to hear a lot about that.
Well, I think a lot of people are, because we are getting more and more attached to our animals, which, I think is a good thing, actually. I think it makes, what was it that Gandhi said, you can judge the enlightenment of a society by the way it treats its animals. And pet ownership is really changing, even over the last, it certainly has changed over the last 200 years, 100 years, but in the last 15 years, pet ownership has really become much more of an emotional bond. So that's one of the things that I really like to focus on. I've gone to humane societies and worked with people who either rescue the animals or sometimes the people who have adopted animals, and they like to just come back and just talk about their animals. People just feel good even just talking about their animals. So I think that's
I have to agree with you there. People love to. It's like their children.
Yes, it really is. It's a connection that is unique. It's like nothing else. And in fact, they say that women, 40% of women will say that they get more emotional support from their dog than from their husband. What do you think about that?
I'm not going there.
Well, you know what? The way I know a lot of people are, laughing, like snickering, like, yeah, husbands. I don't feel it that way. I don't think that it's necessarily a put down of husbands at all. I think it's just a tribute to the emotional support that a dog gives. A human being can't even compete with that. When you think about how, and even your cat, your animals just, they follow you, they love you, they're excited when you get home, they spend so much time, physical contact with you. So yes, it's going to be more emotional support in some way.
I totally agree, because there's that unconditional love, regardless, and unfortunately, we're not really talking about this today, but it is beyond my understanding how people could be cruel to animals. But that's a different story.
That is a different story. But yes, it's true. When you talk about the unconditional love, that's the phrase that people always bring up. There's no judgment. If you want to spend time with your dog never says, well, I can only give you half an hour today. I've got something more important to do. Or they never say, really, you're going to wear that? Everything you do is fabulous. You want to take a nap? Yay! You want to throw the ball? Yay!
Right.
So who can compete with that? Yeah.
Excellent.
So I really work a lot with animal lovers. I work with compassion fatigue also. Sometimes people who work in animal rescue get very, very tired. And often, Belle, it's because of the thing that you brought up. They come face to face more than the general public does with animal cruelty. And that really wears on a person. And so I work a lot with humane societies and people who are in animal rescue, just with self-care. How do you take care of your emotions when you're working in a situation like that? Other things I do in my counseling practice, it's not totally about animals. I also work with moms who have postpartum depression or anxiety. I do a lot of work with families of the mentally ill. I like to do a lot of art expression, helping people bring up things from inside through collage or painting, things like that. And I also do a lot of retreats. So if you would go to my website and click on workshops and retreats, try and keep that pretty well updated so that you can see where I'm going next. But I do a lot of full-day retreats, half-day retreats, and people come and we have titles like How to Have More Peace and Balance in Your Life. A recent one was the Happiness Retreat. So we do all kinds of, I do all kinds of things like that. I really like to get out there and just be like face-to-face with people.
And that's the reason I invited you to be my first guest, because you're so multifaceted. I love it.
Oh, thank you.
So I think we should go back a little and tell me, I want you to tell everybody about Jules.
All right. Well, Jules is a rescue dog, and the way I got him it was kind of a strange story. I went to volunteer for just an afternoon with a rescue group that was having an adoption event at a local pet store, and my job was just to give the dogs a break from the cage, because sometimes they get hyper and nervous being in the cage, and they don't look that good when people are coming to browse and see if they want one of the dogs. So it's good to take them out and exercise them. So I walked up and I could pick whoever I wanted to take for a walk, and my eyes fell on this 10-year-old blind toy poodle, white. And he's sitting there, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, this guy, nobody's going to want this guy. And I'm going to just take him for a walk because poor guy. Well, I put him on the leash, and I was just floored by his attitude, the confidence, the high self-esteem, the way he carried himself with his head high and walking along. You would never, from a distance, you would never have been able to guess that he was blind. He just walked along, trusting that it was going to be fine, even though he couldn't see where he was going. And the literary person in me was kind of like, wow, he trusts, even though he can't see what's ahead. Wow, I like to be like that. I like to be more like that.
He's your role model?
He's my role model.
I love it.
Yeah. He is just the most happy little guy. People think it's going to be sad. Oh, he's a blind dog. He's not sad. He is thrilled every day. So needless to say, I brought him home. I said, well, I'll foster him. And we know how that turned out. I kept him. And the rescue group said, you want that blind elderly dog? We won't even charge you an adoption fee. You can just have him. so I kept him. And boy, he has really turned out to be an amazing addition to our family because I was working with a boy in my practice, a teenage boy who was afraid of a lot of things. And one of the things he was afraid of was dogs. And I thought, well, what would happen if I brought Jules in? So I talked to the boy. I said, I've got this dog. He's not threatening at all, blind, hardly any teeth. We can keep him in a crate. But the way you get over a fear is by getting gradually exposed to it in levels that you can tolerate, keep on increasing it. And it's called habituation. As you get used to it, eventually the fear will fall away. So we tried, he was afraid of a lot of things like spiders. I thought, well, he said, I don't want to do spiders. I thought, no, neither do I. Let's not do spiders.
That makes sense.
We'll do spiders some other day. So I brought Jules in, and it was amazing. I had not trained him, you understand. He's not a trained therapy dog. But he understood somehow on a psychic level, he understood how to approach this boy. Because normally, if he would see you, Belle, he would be so excited. He would be jumping. His ears would be flapping. He would be making a big fuss.
So this was really a very unusual response for Jules.
It was.
Obviously, you didn't tell him that this was afraid.
I talk to him all the time, but I don't know if he understands. But he went up to this boy, and what he did was he turned his back on him and leaned his spine into the boy's leg and just was looking out in the same direction as the boy. And I was just amazed that he was doing that. So I said, how do you feel about that? And he said, I think it's all right. So we just kept talking about other things. There's a dog leaning on my leg, and I'm fine. It's okay. No problem. Let's talk about other things. We're fine. Breathe. So after a few minutes, Jules gets up and he starts to go pat, pat, pat on the couch next to the boy. Pat, pat, pat. And I said to the boy, he's asking if he can sit on your lap. How do you feel about that? And the kid said, I actually think I could do that, but I don't know what end to grab because I never touched a dog before. So I said, well, I can put him on your lap if you don't mind. So I picked him up, and when I put Jules on his lap, Jules just made himself flat like a blanket, which is really unusual because normally he'd be, all excited and trying to kiss your face. And he didn't try any of that kind of stuff with this kid. So he just made himself flat, and the boy started to pet him. And after a while, the boy said, this guy, I like the way his fur feels, and maybe I could have a dog someday.
Wow.
And it went so fast, I couldn't believe it. The boy was able to generalize this. He asked Jules to be back for other visits, and then after a while, he was no longer crossing the street when he would see someone was walking a dog towards him. He was able to go to friends' houses even if they had a dog. And it all started with Jules. So from then on, Jules was part of my practice. And people would say to me, is Jules going to be here next time? And then I started to get the feeling that people were coming to see him and not me.
Well, I'm sure part of your fee goes into his biscuit buying.
That's true. He does. He benefits.
how much perception a dog can have to know and recognize the fear in that child that you were working with. It really is amazing.
It is. It's amazing. I would not have known how to train a dog to do that. I would not. I still wouldn't. But right. Jules, I didn't need to because Jules is just a natural therapist.
Right. And I know they've done some research about animals in nursing homes and even in hospitals. Are you privy to some of that information?
Well, yes, I do know that it really does improve the quality of people's lives. It improves people's spirits. One reason is when you pet your dog or cat or house rabbit or horse, whatever it might be, or cockatoo, you get a release of oxytocin in your brain after about 3 minutes of petting your animal. And the animal does too. And the oxytocin is the cuddling hormone. It's the hormone that nursing mothers have. So it is something that we're very hardwired to want to have. Even men have this oxytocin release. And this is why we want to always hold our animals, pet them, we miss them. And this is part of what creates the bond. It's physiological, not just emotional. So that is a big health benefit. We've known for a long time that when you pet your animal, your blood pressure goes down.
Right.
You've heard that for years.
Right, I know that. I wanted to tell you a quick little story. I had 2 dogs, and now I have none. And I definitely am planning to get another one now that the spring is coming, as soon as we get an official that the weather's going to change. But just a quick snippet of what happened. I took my dog to the vet, and he was going to have surgery. And I don't think I told anybody in my family this, but as they were taking him in, he had been injured by some other dogs in a little fight in the neighborhood. And he looked at me when the vet took him by the leash to go in for surgery. He glanced back at me like, I'm not sure I'm ever going to see you again. And it was, to this day, it's awful that we didn't hug and kiss more before he went in, because I never saw him again.
Oh, I am so sorry. Yeah, that is one of the most painful things, I think, is that unexpected loss, I think. When you think you're taking your animal in for something that's going to be all right, and then it's and any kind of a sudden loss, I think, makes the grief very, very hard.
And they are your family members. There's no question about that.
Yeah, and it's the bonds. There's there are different levels of bonds too. Not everybody is as attached to their animals as everybody else. There's different levels of bonding.
Well, I understand that, and I really miss having a furry animal around because it's always been a part of my life.
Yeah.
But, it will be rectified, I hope, in a very short time.
Yeah, and that. I just wrote a blog about that. I have a blog about pet grief and pet love, and yesterday's topic was, should I get another one? Because that's what you hear from people, as soon as an animal passes away, if you're sad and people notice that, they say, why don't you just get another one? And you hear that so often, and some people are very hurt when people say that to them. It's like, if it were your father, people wouldn't say, why don't you just get another one? This is an intense relationship. You don't just get another one. But then sometimes people begin to wonder, well, when can I? Because, it leaves a void. And what I've seen is that when people rush and do that because other people want them to, because other people can't stand their being in grief, and they think that if you get another one, you won't be in grief anymore, which it doesn't work like that.
Do you think it's different for? Certainly it's different for everyone.
Yes.
But stacking. What do you think about having, the 2 dogs, different age?
Yeah, that's something that some people do so that they won't have the empty house or what we call the dead house feeling when you come home and there's nobody to greet you. So it helps in that way. But then again, as you know from having had multiple animals, they don't replace each other any more than people do. And you still feel each loss. And there's really nothing, we don't really need to avoid it. I think our society is very afraid of death and grief, strangely so. And we really don't see it as a part of life, a sad and hard part of life, but it's normal and it's part of life. So I think we're very uncomfortable with it, and we try and rush through grief. We try and rush other people through grief. And it's something that just has to be resolved. It needs a little bit of time. It needs some support. You need to mourn, memorialize. But I think if the reason somebody would get another dog is to try and not feel their feelings, it's just like anything else we do, to not feel our feelings. Some people shop, some people drink, some people gamble, people do all kinds of things, get too busy. We do all kinds of things to not feel our feelings. But it doesn't really work that well. And if you don't fully resolve your grief over this loss, when there's another loss later on in life, this old grief will still be there, and then it's a complicated grief. You have to go through it then.
Right.
So working it through is very important, and just having permission to, I'm going to be sad for a while, and when people don't like it or say, well, you should just get another one, or other people have worse losses, or those kinds of things,
right.
We'll
Which
say.
are not fair judgments on other people's parts, but So you run some pet grief counseling programs, right?
Absolutely, yeah. I do see people individually at my practice. So I have several people that come to see me because of pet grief, and they come because it's a place where they can talk for 55 minutes a week just about their grief, because people around them really don't know what to say, don't want to hear it, assume they've moved on. And so it's a safe place to come and bring that. So that's one thing, the individual. Another thing is there are pet grief groups. And you can find that if you go online, whatever part of the country or whatever part of the world you're on, you can search pet grief groups. The ones that I participate in personally, there's one at Paws Chicago, downtown on North Clybourne Street. And we do that the third Wednesday of every month at 7 o'clock. And then the first Wednesday of every month in Burr Ridge, which is by Hinsdale, where I practice, there's another pet grief group on the first Wednesday at 7:30. And so usually there's just like 3 or 4 people that come, and we just kind of go around the circle and people get to tell the story. And there's something very healing about that, to talk to people who understand.
Well, absolutely. Any kind of group opportunity, especially with people in the same situation, is a wonderful opportunity.
Oh, yeah. I think another thing that can help people is books. I have books, a book list on my website under the Pet Grief tab at joydavy.com. And there are a lot of good books out on grief, too. So that can be very affirming, too, just to see in black and white that other people go through this, and these are the stages. And because a lot of times when people are going through pet grief, they wonder if they're going crazy. Grief can do that to you, Sometimes people will still hear the tags jingling in the hallway, or they feel a need to keep filling up the water bowl, even though there's no animal there to drink it. They still feel like they have to fill the bowl. All kinds of things. And none of it's crazy. It's just part of what we have to do to resolve the grief. It takes time.
And how do you differentiate between grief and depression?
Oh, well, that's a really good question, because there is a little bit of overlap. And I think one reason we fear grief is that grief can become a chronic depression if it's not resolved. So grief is when we have had a loss, and grief is the feeling. Mourning's different from grief, because mourning is the action. Mourning is what we do, and grief is what we feel. So mourning is, you may have a memorial memorial service. You may have a little decorative box where you keep the collar and the special toy. Mourning, those are the things that you do. But depression is different from grief, because depression, according to our manual, the diagnostic statistical manual that defines everything, depression is at least 2 weeks with a very low mood and not taking pleasure in any of the things that you used to take pleasure in. Those are basically the first two criteria. Uh-huh. But of course, those things would describe grief too. So depression also could be, insomnia, irritability, eating a lot more or eating a lot less. And I guess the way you would tell the difference is if there has been a loss, and that's where this is coming from, then it's grief. And if it's connected with something else, or you're not sure what it's connected with, then it would probably be more depression. But there's a lot that's, very similar. The crying, the sighing, deep mournful sighs, people talk about that. Anger flashing out suddenly. There's a lot. But with grief, of course, you're mainly thinking about your loss, and especially you're thinking about the last scene, the last few minutes, and that's when the grief is really intense. And as time goes on, that last scene becomes just a smaller sort of slide in the slideshow in your mind, but what you're really seeing more of are the happy memories of the whole life.
Right, and that's certainly what you would like people to strive toward.
Yeah. I think it just kind of has to happen sort of naturally, because if you try to not think about things, they tend to get stronger and demand more attention. This one. Don't think about a big juicy lemon and cutting it open and biting into it. Don't think about that. You're going to think about it because I said don't think about it. And it's the same thing with anything else. If you try not to think about it, it tends to insert itself into your mind more strongly. So that's where the mindfulness comes in, where you're just like, you notice the thought and you hold it lightly and let it pass if it will pass, and be accepting and be self-compassionate.
I love all those words. Really seem to work, and it is, I keep going back to that it's such a part of your family, and for people who don't have children or who are empty nesters, they are your children, period.
They really are. They are. I know, as I was growing up, I had a wonderful mother who allowed me to have all kinds of pets. And I felt very maternal, as if these were my children, although I was a child myself. But as an only child, it was very good for me to take care of others and be empathetic with others and think of what others need, and for me to be the one to serve others. So I had rabbits and turtles and a parakeet and toads, gerbils, hamsters. I mean,
are you sure you're not a veterinarian? You didn't have the veterinarian calling?
Yeah, some people said, did you live out in the country? I said, no, it was just a little suburban house, but nobody knew the menagerie that was in there.
That's funny.
It was a great experience, though. I loved just naming them and watching them and trying to imagine things from their point of view. And I think as a lonely child, because I moved so much, I really got a lot of socialization, and I got a lot of benefit, healing benefit. I wasn't lonely because I had all my animals. It was very nice. But one really sad thing, though, was that my parents did give away my dog. And they shouldn't have done that as I look back, but that's what happened. And that is really the experience that helps me understand pet grief more than anything else. Because it's what you mentioned, Belle, about how, the animal is like your child. Well, for me, at 11 or 12 years old, the animal was kind of like a child to me, but it was also my sibling, my best friend, my confidant. I thought of him as just like an advisor almost. I mean, I just was so connected with this dog. It was unbelievable and how connected he was with me. And the loss was something that I think my parents were quite surprised, because to them it was just a dog and they thought of them as being, disposable, replaceable. And they were quite surprised how deeply it affected me. But I always think, the experiences you go through in life, they prepare you for whatever it is that you're going to be doing later.
Right.
And I think I use that now because that's the experience that I go back to that helps me really understand when people have had a loss that they just have a very hard time accepting.
It's interesting because I had a similar situation. I must have been 6 or 7 years old.
Uh-huh.
And we had a little dog, and I came home from school one day, and the dog was not there. And I was told untruly that the dog had run out in the street and was killed, when in fact the dog had been given away. So it took a long time for me to find out the true facts, but that did happen, and yeah, I was hysterical for months.
Yes. I can totally understand that, as was I. It was very hard. And then the way my parents handled the grief was to say, you shouldn't still be feeling that way. Don't be silly. And you're making other people feel bad. Stop it.
Right. Or also, it's time to get over it.
Yes.
That's what I heard.
Yeah. But those are some of the deep experiences. And, a lot of times, and I know, Belle, you work with people who are discovering their passion, and I do too. And sometimes people don't know what their passion is. And I heard an interesting idea, which is that passion originally meant suffering. And you think of, in the religious sense, that's how passion is used, suffering. And sometimes if you can't find your passion, or you don't know what your passion might be, think about what has caused you suffering in your life. And in your suffering, you can find what your passion is in your life. And I could think of a lot of different examples, but just staying with the pet grief, I think that experience of suffering at an early age, that experience led into this being such a passion for me.
That's an very interesting concept. I will have to do some work around that. I have another question, and this isn't something that we were even going to talk about, but do you have any experience with, companion for like leaders of the blind, those kinds of service dogs and service?
I have an interesting book on that. There's a really good book, and I have it right here. It's called Healing Companions by Jane Miller. And this book, well, the subtitle is Ordinary Dogs and Their Extraordinary Power to Transform Lives. This one talks about service dogs and especially focuses on something that's kind of new. We're very used to guide dogs for the blind and dogs that, they can smell when someone's going to have a seizure and they get the person to safety to sit down before the seizure starts, those kinds of things. But now we're starting to see more of psychiatric service dogs. So some people with PTSD or with extreme anxiety, they need that comfort of the dog, or like dogs who are able to sense when somebody's going to have a flashback or somebody is having a flashback, they're getting agitated, and the dog knows what to do to get the person to, sit and be calm until it passes. So dogs are being trained to do all kinds of things. It's amazing. And of course, you've heard about the reading dogs, the dogs that go to the library and read with the kids.
Not really. What about that?
Let me tell you. This is great. A lot of our local libraries have this now, where the dogs come in and the kids come in, and a kid is matched with a dog, and the kid can read to the dog, so these are maybe first grade, second grade, third, fourth. And they can turn the pages and read, and the dog has been trained to show interest when a page is turned. So the child is sitting all alone with the dog reading, so they don't feel that they're going to be corrected or be judged or be hurried, and they can just, comfortably read. And this is raising their reading scores and their reading fluency and their confidence, because, as you said before, they don't judge us.
Right, that's phenomenal.
Yeah.
I love that concept.
Yeah.
So I think that if you have a little closure on all of the human and animal connections, I would really like to have you talk a little about the work that you do with color. And there was something that you told me about, and I wanted to do your seminar, but I wasn't able to be there on a Saturday. There was a name for this particular color thing that you were doing, and I was absolutely enthralled by it. Are you with me on what I was talking about?
I'm thinking, well, I wouldn't say color, but art. I think that's what you're talking about. There's one thing called the vision boards. A lot of people are doing those and have been doing those for a while. And I've done some presentations on creating a vision board. Another one, I think this is what you're thinking about, Belle, it's the soul collage.
Uh-huh.
The soul collage. So that one, that is actually a registered trademark by the person who created it. Her name is Seema B. Frost. And I've done a little work with that. It is fascinating, actually. So that is about, we have all these inner parts, right? And people approach this through the Enneagram, or you can talk about archetypes, or just in the popular culture, we're always talking about my inner child, my inner critic, my inner this, my inner that. So you've got all these inner parts that are up in your brain, and they're all talking. And some people say their heads are so noisy. There's so much chatter up there. So you've got maybe a voice that criticizes what you do, and you've got another voice that maybe it's the voice of your intuition. Maybe it's a little bit quiet. And then you have all these different parts. You could have an inner warrior, an inner earth mother, all different kinds of things. Well, with the soul collage, this really gives expression to that. And you can create these cards that are they could be 5 by 7 or smaller. And you can create actually an oracle deck with these. So one at a time, you create these collages that represent, you could say, disowned parts of yourself or inner parts. And they can be things that are good and helpful. They can be things that are discouraging. And they actually turn out to be quite beautiful, even if you think you're not creative, because you're collaging these beautiful images together, and they actually turn out to be like little pieces of artwork. You create this deck, and you can journal on each one of these cards about what does this say to you, what does it mean to you, and really go deeper into that aspect of your personality. And at a time when you have a question, like, should I change my career? Should I adopt another dog? Whatever, then you can take out your deck that you've made yourself, and you can bring out these cards that show these inner parts that are all at work, and get some understanding, some clarity. Naturally, it's going to apply to you because you created it. This is you, right? These are all your own inner parts. So another thing you can do with the soul collage is you can bring in anybody who influenced you in your life that is still perhaps at times talking or influencing you now. Like me, because of the generation that I'm from, I would pick Dr. Joyce Brothers, Mr. Rogers. There's certain people that were well known as I was growing up that became influences, even though I never knew them. Also, my 5th grade teacher, also Sandy, my dog, that I had when I was 10. So you can make a card for each one of those, too. And so, as you can see, it's going to be very personal, very representative of you and your different personality aspects. And it really helps you clarify things and understand yourself so much better.
Do you have any plans to maybe come up with a way of doing this as an online, or is it really hands-on and you need to have people in the room for your coaching and counseling while you're doing that?
Well, that's a good question. I know people can go to YouTube and see, if you put soul collage, you can see people all around the world, Australia and everywhere, talking about soul collage. So that's one way that people could find out more about it. I do like to work in person with people, and I noticed that, in a group, there's this synergy that happens when people come together and support one another and listen to each other. So I really do enjoy that in-person group kind of experience.
Okay, so let's say that somebody in another state that's listening wanted to have you run a workshop on soul collage or doing this oracle deck, or
yes,
we'll be glad to give out your website at the end, and certainly have people get in touch with you if they think it sounds like, we're going to turn you into a traveling counselor, social worker, and certainly the color stuff.
Belle, it is amazing that you said that. It is so amazing. You don't even know how amazing that is, because I created a vision book. Now, we talk about vision boards,
right?
And I have those, but I also created a vision book, which is, I like to do little artistic kinds of things. So it's just funny. It's just fun and pretty for me. So I made this vision book with scrapbooking paper, pictures from the internet, pictures from magazines, and about 5 years ago, I filled several pages with, I'm doing retreats in various areas, and I'm traveling to do retreats here and there. And at the time, I saw no way to do it, no way at all. I just put it there because I felt it. It just felt good to think about that, traveling. And I was thinking, I'd like to go to New Mexico. I'd like to go to Quebec. I was thinking of all the places I'd like to go to. And then here you are saying this to me. It's like, how did you know?
I didn't, but I know that people could certainly benefit from all the things that you do. You can take your show on the road.
I can.
No problem.
Can I bring my dog?
You can always bring your dogs, because it's your traveling companion.
That's the thing. I need to find a way to bring my dog and go to other places. I would absolutely love, 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 love to do that. Does it seem to you, Belle, that retreats are becoming bigger? There's more and more need, or more and more interest in workshops and retreats?
I think that that's absolutely true. And I think that what's so beautiful about doing those is that you're in a place that there's no distractions.
Yes.
So you're there with the people, and you create these really special bonds, as well as you're able to focus and really be in the moment when you're in a place other than your own home or even a friend's home where there's all the distractions. So for the presenter, it's fabulous, as well as for the participants. And it sounds like maybe Joy may be on a mission. It may have something to add to her repertoire.
Absolutely. I would absolutely love to do that. I've been thinking more and more about it, and creating in my mind and on paper weekends that I would like to. And my daughter actually is a wonderful, truly gifted certified massage therapist. And I was thinking, she and I could go together. People could have, while one person is having massage therapy, another person could be meeting with me one-on-one for just the coaching. And then it would be a beautiful place in nature. People would be hiking or journaling, and then we would come together and we would do some art expression, and we would do some sharing, and we would do some visualization and relaxation techniques. Yeah.
Sounds great. And it sounds like I might be one of your first clients as well. Perhaps you could turn this into a joint venture.
Absolutely. I think that would be wonderful.
Wonderful. So I think that I learned a lot, and I hope that my audience did as well. If you could give us a couple of pearls of wisdom to take away about what we talked about today, from, grief to retreats to, just kind of just give us a couple of things to come away from.
Well, absolutely. As far as pet grief is concerned, I would say, it's important to understand that the grief, no matter if it's for a human or for an animal, the grief is going to be in proportion to the bond, and that there's nothing crazy about grieving for someone, any being, that was an emotional support and that you love very much, and that's okay. So to give yourself permission and trust your feelings, and actually, those are big life lessons for us, not just for grief, but for life. Trust your feelings and give yourself permission to feel what you feel.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. Thank you. I like that, and I think that's really important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and, as far as the connection that we have with our animals, 65% of people buy Christmas presents for their pets, and 75% of pet owners sleep with their pets. So, it just goes to show that they truly have become very interwoven. I don't think this would have been at all the case even 50 years ago. They have become very interwoven into the fabric of the family. So they're very, very important, and they're very, very good for us. I have one person in my practice. It's like the news stories you read about where the dog discovers the person's cancer.
Right.
This dog was sniffing and scratching at her chest area. She had just recently been checked, but she went back, and it turned out that the dog actually had detected a tumor. So she was treated for it, and those kinds of things are just amazing. The dogs are so tuned into us, and cats are also in a different way. So the connection is very, very important. So pearls of wisdom. I've got, as you said, my practice and my interests are very multifaceted, but I do have a lot of it listed on my website. So if anybody would like to go and check it out and also find out how to contact me or find out what I'm doing next, if they would like to participate or just get more information on any of the things that we talked about, my website is www.joydavy.com. And as you said, Belle, very kindly, that Davy is D-A-V-Y, just 4 letters,
right?
joydavy.com. And and my email address is joydavy@joydavy.com. So I can be easily found on the internet. And would love if anybody would contact me after the show. I would be thrilled.
And I will also make sure that we post the name of that book about healing companions.
Oh, sure.
So that if anyone's interested in picking it up or getting it at the library, and I know you have a lot of books out there, and congratulations to you on that.
Well, I do have books that I'm writing, and
they're not out yet.
They're not out yet, but I've got 3 that are in process. But if anybody's interested in knowing what they would be like, I write blogs, and so one of them is Pet Grief, Pet Love blog. Another one is for young mothers, called The Mother's Mentor, and another one is called Living in Flow. So if you like, Belle, I could send you those links too, and people could check out the blogs.
That would be terrific. I will be sure that they get posted, and I wanted to thank you enormously. I had a fun time and an enjoyable time listening to you and all of your expertise about so many different areas, and it was a pleasure having you. Actually, it was an honor having you. It wasn't just a pleasure.
Well, thank you so much. Well, actually, the honor is all mine because this is your first radio show, and I'm just so excited for you. I just think this is a wonderful opportunity. And this is what radio should be, I think, is people coming on and sharing information. It's just so much more interesting than what you would normally hear on the radio. So I like that, just hearing different ideas and getting different learning from listening to people.
Perfect. I do appreciate having you, and as the listeners might not know, or maybe they do know, this broadcast is going to be every other Tuesday. So the next one, I think that I wrote the date down, but of course, do I know where I wrote it? Today is the 25th, so I'm going to give you a real quick idea of the next date. It is April the 8th, and it will be broadcast at 12 o'clock Central Time, 1 o'clock Eastern Time. And my guest will be Cassie Nevitt, and she will be talking about the art of feminine presence. So with that, I again want to thank everyone, you, Joy, especially, for doing a fabulous job and giving us some wonderful information on the broad spectrum, mostly about your pet and human connection. And I think that I will say goodbye and hope that everybody will check out your website again. It's www.joydavy.com. And for now, let's say goodbye. Bye. Bye, honey. Thanks.
Thank you for joining Belle's Buzz Talk Show. We meet again in 2 weeks right here on Bold Radio Station. You can reach out to Belle at www.coachbelle.com. She is also buzzing around on Facebook. Make it Buzzing Week.